Okay, good morning, everyone. It is the 10 o'clock hour. It is Tuesday, March 8th, 2022. The Board of Supervisors of the County of Del Norte and the governing body of all other special assessment and taxing districts. Okay, good morning, everyone. It is the 10 o'clock hour. It is the curtain. Are we all done with that part? Anyway, of all other special assessment and taxing districts for which said board so acts is now meeting in regular session. Only those items that indicate a specific time will be heard at the assigned time. All other items may be taken out of sequence to accommodate the public and staff availability. If you all would please take a moment of silence for our lost Supervisor Berkowitz. Please take a moment to keep his family in your thoughts. Thank you. Thank you. And just another note, Supervisor Starkey is out with a medical issue, so it's just the three of us. Okay, at this time, Kylie, would you please take roll?
Supervisor Howard?
Here.
Supervisor Short?
Here.
Chair Hemmingson?
I am here. Now we'll continue on with a moment of reflection. Thank you. Now, if you'll all stand, please, and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Introduction of new employees.
None today.
Okay, none today. Thank you. County Council, any actions from closed session?
Nothing today.
Thank you. At this time, I would request any deletions or corrections or additions from board members to the agenda. In order to add an item to the agenda, the matter must have come to the attention of the county subsequent to the posting of the agenda, and the matter requires action before the next regular meeting of the Board of Supervisors. Is there any of those? The only thing that I have of note is that we will not be doing the budget transfers because we need 4/5 vote, and we don't have that. That's the only change that I have. Anything else? Okay. Okay. We are going to move on to brief reports from county supervisors on actions for the last couple of weeks. And we're going to start with Supervisor Short.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Last couple of weeks, I listened in on the Klamath Project Facilities Agreement Roundtable, attended tri-agency meeting, listened in on the Marathon School Board meeting. Lasted till a little after 11 o'clock, I believe, 7+ hours. Had a meeting with Joel and Larry Karstad in regard to Del Norte Ambulance and their request for to operate as an exclusive provider. And thank you, Joel, for providing or drafting the resolution that we have on the agenda today. RCTA and Local Transportation Commission was canceled for this month. Listened in on the Northwest California Resource Conservation and Development Council meeting. Listened in on the Planning Commission meeting. They had a pretty robust discussion, kind of trying to work on some deregulation. Appreciate the conversation that was had there. Attended the agenda review for Del Norte Solid Waste Management Authority and fielded many emails from constituents about the possibility of the governor appointing a board member. And that is my report.
Thank you so much. Supervisor Howard.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Had the opportunity to spend quite a bit of time with Senator McGuire both on an air ride home and at lunch. Friday last week, we discussed many important things about the county, but really wanted to focus on our PILT dollars, our payment in lieu of taxes, specifically on our wildlife lands, and ensuring that somehow that makes us into the conversations with the governor's extensive surplus budget this year. It's about time he paid a lot of us county lands monies back for the lands and for the state that we have in our wildlife area, and then also address priorities around reconstruction of jail. Is a big focus. Had a meeting in Smith River with the community out there that was organized by John Roberts. We had really good attendance. Tamara Layton with the Local Transportation Commission showed up, as well as Dominic Mello with our code enforcement. Representatives from the Smith River Community Services District, and in addition, our Sheriff Waltz also showed up, and myself, and we spent about 2 hours answering concerns of our constituents in Smith Rivers, mostly around some transportation issues, not so much on blight this time, but and then also animal control, which has been a major concern out there for several years, and a lot of discussion around Measure Up. And so they were well informed, left in good spirits, and hopefully we'll reassemble again here soon. And it seemed to be something they wanted to do on a more regular basis now that the neighborhood watch is no longer in progress. Sorry, I had my mic off here. As Supervisor Short mentioned, we attended tri-agency, also attended a meeting of the Senior Center Board, and then also met with our newest representatives from the governor's office, Marjan Salon, who's in San Francisco area, but he represents from San Francisco all the way to the Oregon border. So quite a bit of territory to cover. And we really focused on the insurance issues that I've been discussing here with the board for the last several months, and trying to figure out how Commissioner Valera, through the restrictions under Prop 103, could really have a better course of action that doesn't allow the large insurance lobbies to sue every time he puts a proposal on the table, and not allow for some of the more transparent details around how insurance companies charge in these high fire severity areas. As many of you are aware here, maybe already, our area in particular has not been spared from increased insurance costs, some of which we're seeing over 400% increases this year, just for fire severity ratings that have gotten close to 100. These don't come from the state of California. They actually come from the insurance providers themselves, and are almost entirely analyzed by one company for all the insurance providers in the state. And it's questionable on how these ratings are given, even when there's seems to be a considerable amount of data, especially in our region, how we've done incredible work to shelter some of our communities like Cayuchi and Gasky and Big Flat with fuel breaks and having fire type stations close by. In addition, hydrants with water tanks, how these mitigations are taking place, but not factored in to how the calculation is occurring. So it's a great deal of concern, and it's really a cost about affordable housing and affordable insurance to keep us all going in what is tends to be a time when there's a great deal of inflation and cost. So that was the main part of our discussion there. I wanted to touch briefly on some concerns I had at our California State Association of Counties meeting last week. It's our quarterly meeting, but we were honored to have representatives from the LAO's office there. That's the Legislative Analyst Office of the state legislature. And as many of you may already be aware, the LAO's office is projecting about a $42 billion surplus for the state. So that's huge. I mean, that's record breaking. It's also a surplus that once you take out all the state's expenses, including discretionary expenses, that's what's left over. And under a proposition that passed many years ago, that proposition essentially splits that surplus between schools and between those that pay their taxes. However, the governor does have an option to allocate much of those funds prior to that split occurring. And that could go in the direction of infrastructure. It could go in the discretion of paying down debt. It could go towards suspending gas taxes for a little while. But the one that most interests me, and I know will most interest the board, is subvention, local government subvention funds. These are funds that are no strings attached and then essentially would roll into our general fund and help support our general fund, which is rather bleak right now. So CSAC is beginning to lobby along with the remaining 58 counties in the state very hard to the governor's office to ensure that some of these funds are allocated to the counties, especially for like past due taxes with our PILT supplementation. The LAO's office also made a very clear statement to the governor's office that they hope he puts a lot into the bank, basically our reserve funds, as even the governor's office is projecting a budget deficit for the next 3 fiscal years. And so that was kind of interesting to see, even though there's a surplus this year, his next 3 fiscal year budgets are projecting a deficit. So they're encouraging him to piggy bank those funds in anticipation of that deficit. Either way, I think it'd behoove us as a county to really lobby hard along with the other 58 counties to ensure that there's some expenditure of dollars towards these subvention funds and help make us whole. Also wanted to touch on something that we were all puzzled by last week, which was the announcement by Governor Newsom's office about Care Court, which is really a brand new framework to provide individuals with mental health and substance abuse disorders the care and services they need to essentially get healthy. And the proposal would obviously need to go in front of the state legislature to be approved, but and this is what's concerning to me, it would require counties to provide a comprehensive treatment to the most severely impaired and untreated Californians and hold patients accountable to those treatments. When I see language that the governments, in this case, our local governments, would be legally responsible for those individuals, this is the terminology for a state mandate. And as most state mandates that we've seen come down to all the 58 counties in the past, generally there's no money in the budget to support this once it's passed by the legislature. And this is what really concerns me. Currently, there's about 750 million allocated towards a program like this right now, but that's just a drop in the bucket for what they're discussing, which include all the way up to folks that wouldn't pass this trial period in court. So they would return after 12 months of treatment. If they couldn't get through treatment, they'd become wards of the state. So we'd be looking back at the 1970s and essentially sanitariums to house our most severely mentally ill here in the state of California. And this obviously goes into a question about treatments and freedoms under our Constitution. So I know it's going to be a robust argument, but in particular for us in the county to pay attention to as this legislation begins to work its way through the halls is what will be the cost to Del Norte County if we're mandated by law to implement programs of this nature. So it's a big concern and one I really want us to pay attention to. And finally, I'll close. I've been having several discussions with Nick and Lisa Rail. Their vision and dream is to have a performing arts center here in Del Norte County. And they've raised quite a bit of money to get there already, including Nick's own personal dollars in the neighborhood of close to 3 million, but their project projections are close to a $42 million project. So it's quite a dream, but it's one that I think is really interesting, especially for our children, and to give them a little hope about what's here for their future. And I believe in the next couple months, I'm going to be approaching our chairman to see if this is a presentation that the board could hear, because I think the board would be interested in what Nick and Lisa Rail have envisioned for a performing arts center here in Del Norte County. And that's all I have today, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Okay. Well, I also attended a webinar that Supervisor Short talked about, the Klamath Project Facilities Agreement roundtable. always very interesting to talk about or listen, I guess more listening. We didn't do much talking. Then we had a Zoom meeting with Dominic from Senator Feinstein's office with the county staff as well as our advocate from Thorn Run Partners, Greg Burns, to kind of introduce ourselves to the senator's staff, let them know what our issues are, where we're coming from, what it's like up here, and what we have to deal with. So it was all received quite well, and hopefully we will continue that dialogue. I had an agenda review, had a last chance grade mitigation update meeting. We're still studying the dewatering possibilities on the virtually the same alignment. Probably won't have any information on that, on whether they're going to continue to move forward with that issue for a couple of months. And then, of course, the tunnel is the other option that's on the table right now, and they're still looking at that. As Supervisor Short said, we both attended via Zoom the Northwest California Resource Conservation and Development meeting. That was a pretty easy meeting. Didn't take long to get through that. I was also part of the Gear Innovations project team on the whale the whale entanglement issues having to do with Dungeness crab gear. And then as Supervisor Howard stated, we had a lunch meeting with Senator McGuire, and I won't go over all that again, but he knows about a lot of our issues. One of those that I keep bringing up to him is the jet fuel tax that small airports like ours should be receiving and don't. And so he's going to check that out. That was the only thing I wanted to mention besides what Supervisor Howard said. And with that, we're going to move on. That was it for me. We'll move on to the consent agenda.
Motion to approve.
Second.
The motion and the second. Any public comment on the consent agenda items?
Oh, on number 9, let me see what I got for notes. It was a little confusing when I was reading the supporting documentation. So it seems to be that from what I read, and I'm not, that there was inability to solicit feedback from the LATCO in order to not get this extended, because it just seems to me it takes forever to get things done in our county. And if people aren't constantly hounding whoever they got to get the information, then we're not getting our stuff done here. So I'd like to know why there was no feedback and why, we can't get things moving along for this, I forgot what it was. Oh, it's right here. Yeah, one more time. I don't have it, but it's for the Pebble Beach, number 9, isn't that where the
Yes,
the
that's
Wavecrest?
Wavecrest Drive, North Pebble Beach Drive.
Yeah, so I just kind of curious about how come, people are lax on their jobs, not getting it, so that we don't have to continue asking for advances for something that should have been done a year ago. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment on consent agenda items only?
Chair, I have one online.
Okay.
My mouse is acting up. Give me 1 second. Brandon, you on?
Yes, good morning. Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, this is Brandon Bieber, a Smith River resident. Unfortunately, here again expressing my concern for this board's what appears to be unquenchable appetite to increase government. I'm not sure if you've looked around town lately, but the additional millions of dollars you've allocated and the increased positions you've allowed through DHHS is not having positive results. On agenda item number 4, I was just wondering what that $5,000 was going towards. That's a budget of nearly $1 million, $975,000. And just wondering what $5,000 is going to do for 6 months of that contract. I request the board reconsider approving agenda item number 5. Wondering why you're segregating social workers and how you think celebrating social services is good for our community. I'm sure the professional work employees conduct deserves recognition, but that's called a job. This board needs to quit celebrating mediocrity. This proclamation doesn't make social worker professionals feel more valued. It illustrates the board's attempt to make everything government. In regards to line item number 10, creating another position through DHHS for a social worker. DHHS has 17 jobs posted. Why are you creating positions when you can't fill the ones you have? The county openly recognizes their inability to attract and retain qualified employees, yet you continue to make positions and increase government spending that won't expire. You are doing yourselves and our community a great disservice by continually expanding government. I request this board do some self-evaluation. If your interest is to perpetually increase government, our county is destined for failure. Please take a stand and vote no on line item number 10. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
Chair, I don't have any more online.
Okay, seeing no other public comment, then we'll bring it back to the board. Kylie, would you please
Mr.
poll? Yes, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind, I would like, since Ms. Kunstler is here to address item 9
Oh, okay,
for the edification of our community.
sure.
Yeah, good morning, board members. Thank you for the chance to speak about this. This is our second amendment to the professional services agreement for our Wavecrest Pebble Beach project. The first amendment had to do with some additional money that we needed in order for an expanded scope of work. The most recent is related to a prolonged period that we had to wait for to receive feedback from California Coastal Commission staff. Both of these projects are within the coastal appeals jurisdiction. They will require coastal development permits. Obviously, a lot of money is being spent on the engineering drawings for this or plans. And from a staff's perspective, we didn't want to move forward until we had, a somewhat certainty that they would not be appealed. And that is why the project has been delayed.
Great. Thank you, Heidi.
Thank you, Heidi.
Kylie, would you please poll the vote?
Supervisor Howard,
Yes.
Supervisor Short,
Yes.
Chair Hemmingson.
Yes. Okay. Moving on to item number 13.
Chair.
You had
The proclamation.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, we have a proclamation for,
This is the proclamation of Professional Social Worker Month, March 2022. Whereas for the past 100 years, social workers have helped America's leaders weave the nation's social safety net. It is not surprising that social work is currently one of the fastest growing professions in the United States, with social workers employed by many different organizations and industries, including private and public agencies, hospices and hospitals, schools and universities, businesses and foundations, military branches and veteran centers, as well as national and public elected offices. Whereas everyday social workers address the emotional, psychological, economic, and/or physical needs of millions of people. And whereas the social work profession creates pathways to full participation in society. And the primary mission of a social worker is to enhance human well-being and help meet the basic needs of all people, especially the most vulnerable. And whereas social workers celebrate the courage, strength, and determination of the human spirit while working to empower others to hope, dream, and believe in their own potential so that their families can be reunited and elders and or dependent adults can be self-sufficient. And whereas social workers help families use their strength, resilience, and self-advocacy to navigate life challenges and also help them function better in their environments, improve their relationships with others, and solve personal and family problems through a wide range of services. Whereas social workers are considered essential employees, working tirelessly to ensure the health and safety of those they serve during the pandemic, social workers have always been present in times of crisis, helping people overcome issues, and will continue to fulfill the needs of the families, children, and individuals of the community. Now, therefore, the Del Norte County Board of Supervisors hereby proclaim the month of March 2022 as Professional Social Worker Month in recognition of social workers and their commitment and dedication to the individuals, families, and community of Del Norte County, and call upon all citizens in the observance and support of social workers. Passed and adopted this 8th day of March, 2022.
Thank
Say a
you.
few words. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
We are just very honored and appreciative of this proclamation, and we also wanted to acknowledge our hardworking social workers that we brought with us today. If you guys could stand up.
Thank you. Okay, we've come to our first timed item, which is public comment period. Members of the public may address the board on matters which are within the jurisdiction of the board. If you're addressing the board regarding a matter listed on the agenda, you may be asked to hold your comments until the board takes up that matter. We will limit the comment period to 3 minutes. Is there any public comment?
Good morning.
Good
I'm
morning.
Teresa Schnacker, an IHS worker. First of all, I'd like to say, share my my condolences for the loss of Bob. He'll be missed. We know he supported a lot of causes. And so, second of all, I'd like to thank the board for our attendant agreement that we have standing with the county as Del Norte caregivers. And thank you and have a great day.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
Linda Sutter. So, Mr. Howard, it was very interesting to hear that the state has a $42 billion surplus. And so my wheels started turning right away because it would be nice, since there's several $1 million. I can't remember exact number for statewide that school bonds are owed. I think it's 193 million, but that sounds awful cheap. It would be nice if all those loans could be forgiven with some of that. And appreciate if our leaders might even mention that across the state. That's a big deal. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comments?
My speech is kind of like hers, but we already read it, so I'm going to say it anyway. We want to start by saying, as caregivers, are going to give condolences to the board and Bob's family. It's never easy losing someone. Us caregivers know that firsthand. We also want to say that we're excited to have our tentative agreement with the county and our contract. We are happy that the county worked with us respectfully, quickly, and we can't wait to see more money in our paycheck. So thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Shree Etterbeck and I'm a caregiver. First of all, I want to give my condolences to you guys. It's not easy losing somebody. As you know, we are right there with you. We are really excited about the new contract and what holds for us, and we feel more valued with some of the new language. And we hope that our members feel the same when they vote and the county votes yes as well on it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
Good morning, Supervisors.
Good morning.
My name is Marcus McRae. I'm the Regional Director for SAU 2015. And, we came here today, we were going to tell you that we thought we were really close to a contract and tell you what we thought it would take to get to it. But we're really happy to instead have a tentative agreement. So thank you. Thank you for hearing what caregivers are saying about what they need to continue to go to work safely. So that's protective equipment, it's training. We also thank you for the real investment in wages. It's going to do a lot to address the caregiver shortage that exists in our county right now as well. And it really speaks volume to your values as a board. So we think that this means that we can take care of our own here in this county. And at home where seniors want to be, this really benefits everyone. It has about $400,000 in new funding from the federal and state government. The public authority negotiating team was a real joy to work with. So thank you for that as well. We look forward to continue to working with you to bring health and safety to our community. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Any other public comment?
Chair, I don't have any online.
Okay, seeing no public comment, I will close the public comment period. And we'll move on to our 10:30 timed item, which is Dr. Stutz. Is he on, Kylie?
He is on.
Great.
Hi, thanks for having me. Can you guys hear me?
We can.
Sure thing.
Thank you so much for being here.
All right, I have my assistant here today, my son, so he can help me give you guys some data. Real briefly, I just wanted to mention my support for social services in the county as well. My parents were social workers for when I was younger. Despite what some people may say, it's a very difficult job that doesn't pay very much. It's not a normal job. None of these social services jobs are, none of these jobs that we do that are interacting with the public on a day-to-day basis are easy, and none of them pay very well. So my respect and support to the social workers in the county, absolutely. I'll move on to the COVID update. So just real briefly, some data for you guys. As of Friday, we only had one hospitalization that was COVID related. This has undoubtedly changed. I was on duty all last week through the weekend as well, and I know that I admitted several people with COVID as their primary diagnosis. So that number has certainly changed, and I haven't heard this morning's numbers yet. For the week of February 28th through March 6th, we had a total of 87 new cases in Del Norte County. This is about a 27% decrease from the week prior, which was about 120 new cases. Also recently, unfortunately, we've had about 3 COVID-related deaths. On the 23rd of February, we had a 79-year-old male unvaccinated who died of COVID, or at least COVID-related. On the 26th of February, we had a 71-year-old who was admitted for COVID and died. Series was complete. His series was completed in May of 2021. His primary vaccination series, but unfortunately had no booster. So that vaccination was about 8 months old. And then on March 1st, we had a 59-year-old unvaccinated individual who died of COVID. So 3 new deaths since recently. We're still hanging around at about the same numbers of vaccinated. So we have about 55.5% of our 12 and older population, and about 14% of our ages 5 to 11 are vaccinated. So that's the raw data. And let me know what questions you guys have.
Okay. So I think I'll open it up for public comment at this time. Dr. Stutz, if you're going to hang around, maybe to answer some questions.
Absolutely.
Any public comment?
Chair, I have one online.
Okay.
Brandon, you are on.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Stubbs. I was just curious as why the county continues to have the fully vaccinated graph on its propaganda hub. Even though a person, like you just illustrated, may have gotten their 2 shots without the booster, are they really considered fully vaccinated? And I would appreciate if the county could maintain accurate information. This does seem like propaganda for a lot of reasons, and a reason to propel your hysteria. If you're last time, a month ago, you missed the last board meeting, but a month ago you mentioned that the COVID mortalities were greatly dictated by a doctor's judgment. And just wondering if you felt any pressure to maybe show more statistics or to validate your claims. I have question number 2 is there have been reports from families and from practicing medical professionals who say that the care at Sutter Coast was not adequate to treat COVID, and that some of the deaths were a result of improper or lack of treatment. Just wondering how you'd respond to that. And question number 3 is CDC has data that represents about 24,000 Californians died before COVID every month. And through 2 years, your judgment has dictated about just over 80,000. Not sure what the current number is, but it doesn't really seem justifiable to shut down society. And just wondering if you could correlate those numbers, and if you could give any examples of local successes that your illegal mandates have created. Thank you.
Yeah, so those are a lot of questions to answer. I believe the first one was about the dashboard and the vaccination numbers. You're absolutely right there, Brandon, that the definition of fully vaccinated is misleading. 6 to 8 months after your initial vaccine, there's a new version of COVID out, it's mutated. Your vaccine doesn't work as well as it did, a few weeks or months after you initially got it. So that's absolutely the case that that graph, that number, it means less because what we know now, right? So that's the way the graph was defined, and that's what we've stuck with. But really, it demonstrates the importance of getting your booster, right? Of getting your yearly influenza vaccine, things like that, because viruses change, our immunity wanes. And if you want to maintain that protection, then you have to get your booster shots, get your tetanus booster shot, right? Get your, various boosters are for many of the vaccines that we have available. So yes, that number is it overestimates our protection from COVID. And in coming months, and years, there'll be a change in the definition of what it means to be fully vaccinated. In fact, we're moving away from that terminology, and we're probably going to start using terminology closer to currently vaccinated, right? So if you've had your vaccine in the last 3 to 6 months, then you probably have more protection, right? Second question or concern, I think, was about the care at Sutter. COVID is a primarily respiratory disease, right? It kills people by damaging their lungs. That's something that every hospital in America is capable of taking care of without sending people to an alternative facility for higher levels of care. People usually die of respiratory diseases. That's because breathing is a primary function of our body, right? Respiration. Every hospital in America is capable of competently taking care of somebody who's in respiratory failure, right? especially when there's a disease that doesn't have very many medical therapies like drugs and things like that for COVID. So it's not been my experience that I've seen people being improperly treated for COVID. The treatment for severe COVID is the same as the treatment for severe pneumonia or influenza. It's to take care of that person's respiratory failure. And those techniques are the same no matter what hospital you go to in the United States. And those standards are very high. In fact, it's the primary training of emergency physicians and internal medicine physicians, as well as anesthesiologists, to take care of respiratory failure, because that's the primary way that people die in this country and in any country, right? So no, I disagree with that. I think the care has been quite high at Cedar Coast, especially for a rural community that has access to only one hospital. And then the last, I don't remember what the last concern was. I'm sorry, maybe you could repeat it.
Just the mortality rate and how it isn't significantly different from pre-COVID times.
Yeah, so actually, I would like to show a slide about that. Let's see if I can share my screen here with you guys. I'm going to pull this up. So every year, let's see if I can share my screen. Every year in the United States, can you guys see that slide?
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Every year in the United States, since the early 2000s, the United States has, the CDC has kept data regarding influenza-like, and these are calculated all over the United States. And this slide summarizes those respiratory-related deaths from influenza-like illness from 2014, well before the pandemic happened, through January 2022, right? And you can see as you go along the percentage of all-cause deaths. So they took the percentage of respiratory deaths as opposed to all-cause mortality in the United States. Car accidents, drug overdoses, heart attacks, everything, right? Normally respiratory deaths from influenza-like illness only represent somewhere, like if you look back in 2015, somewhere between 10 and 20% of all of the deaths in the United States. And all those peaks that you see are the influenza seasons every year, right? 2014, 15, 16, 17, 18, those little peaks that you see on the left side of the graph, right? 10 to 20% of all cause mortality. And then we come to 2019 to 2022, and we see that gigantic spike. Now, that represents COVID, right? And influenza and pneumonia and all the influenza-like illnesses that cause respiratory deaths in the United States. So for me, that speaks for itself. And, you know, there's going to be accusations that, oh, we overcounted COVID and all this thing. We weren't looking for influenza. But I can tell you in my practice and all over the United States, everybody was still looking for pneumonia. We were still looking for influenza, right? So we were, I would say we weren't undercounting those diseases. But that graph for me speaks volumes about, you know, how many people died of this respiratory illness.
Thank you, Dr. Stutz.
Yeah, I'll stop my sharing.
Are there any questions from board members or the public at this time for Dr. Stutz?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you again, Dr. Stutz. Appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me.
All right, and your assistant. Okay, we're gonna move on to item number 13. Appoint Chris Sterretts-Foote as the interim director of Health and Human Services.
Move to approve.
I have a motion
And second.
and a second. Any public comment? Nothing, Kylie? See no public comment. We'll bring it back to the board. Kylie, would you please poll the vote?
Supervisor Short,
Yes.
Supervisor Howard,
Yes.
Chair Hemmingson.
Yes. Okay, item number 14, introduce and read by title only an ordinance creating and adding chapter 7.18 organic waste disposal reduction to the Del Norte County Code. And 2, an ordinance adopting the California Residential Code Fire Code, and Green Building Code as requested respectively by the Assistant County Administrative Officer and the Director of Community Development. For motion,
Move to approve.
And second,
I have a motion and a second. Any public comment? Seeing no public comment, Kylie, would you please poll the vote?
Supervisor Short,
yes.
Supervisor Howard,
Yes.
Chair Hemmingson.
Yes. Okay, item number 15, approve and adopt a resolution of the Del Norte County Board of Supervisors setting an election for Supervisor of District 5 on the November 8th general election as requested by County Council. You want to speak to this, County Council?
Yeah, so this is the product of kind of a lot of work over the last week, scrambling to figure out what to do with the vacancy. This is the approach taken in San Benito twice now. It is not ideal as the filing period here is pretty short, but it is the earliest available time for the people of District 5 to choose their own supervisor. And would shorten the time that an appointed supervisor from the state would serve. I tried to lay out the resolution in such a way as to kind of almost be a little legal opinion. So hopefully it's clear to everybody, but if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Okay, thank you. We want to go to public comment or you want a motion or?
No, I'd love to hear public comment on this.
Okay, I'll open it up for public comment.
Just one question is, when will the filing period be for this?
It ends on March 16th.
March 16th?
Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
Chair, I have comment online.
Okay,
Karen, you are on.
Good morning, Karen Sanders. Sorry, I couldn't be there today, but I do support this resolution. And the reason is because it gives the voice to the people. That is enough time. You've got what, at least a week. And I would say that's plenty of time for somebody to step forward, get the paperwork done, and then to be able to, or peoples, to be able to run for this office. And again, it gives the people of District 5 the opportunity to have a vote as opposed to it being at the governor's level. Thank you.
thank you. Any other public comment?
I don't have any more online, Chair.
Okay. Morning.
Morning. My name is Kevin Hendrick. I am a former resident of District 5. I urge you not to approve this resolution setting the election dates for filling the District 5 supervisor vacancy. I'm trying to shoehorn this primary vote in June with this tight time frame is just not reasonable. March 8th to 16th is too short, allowing only 8 days to collect signatures and to file is inadequate if you want to attract good candidates. For the 3rd district race, which is open right now, they have from February 14th to March 11th, 32 days. For the 4th district race that's open right now, they have from February 14th to March 16th, 37 days. For the 5th district, you're providing 8 days. What's the rush? Furthermore, the agenda as it's listed only refers to setting the election date on November 8th. There's no reference to having a primary date in June on the agenda. I would suggest that, well, you have to read the fine print of the resolution to understand and to know that the election actually could be settled in June. If somebody is elected in June, they could be sworn in July. That's not at all clear on the agenda as it's listed to notify the public. So the way the agenda lists the action is inadequate public notice of the possible impact of this action. And this leaves the vote subject to challenge and further delays for Brown Act violations. For both of these reasons, I urge you to vote no on this resolution and direct staff to develop a more reasonable schedule and a plan for filling this vacancy. That's it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Chair, I have another hand raised online,
Okay.
a couple actually. Tanya, you are on.
Hi, I'm Tanya Piercy in the county, and I also would like to add my support for this resolution, as it does give the people a chance to vote for the person that steps up, as opposed to just the governor putting somebody into that slot that you have no, I mean, you don't get a choice at all. So that's just my thought. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have one more, Chair.
Okay.
Alex, you are on. You just need to unmute your mic.
Okay, can you hear me now? This is Alex. And
Yep.
I also live in District 5, and I concur with the last gentleman. So what is the rush? I mean, who's reasoning for that rush? It just doesn't make sense, besides maybe violating voter laws. So can somebody explain to me what's the rush? That's it.
Thank you.
Chair, I don't have any more online.
Is there any other public comment? Okay, seeing no other public comment, then we'll bring it back to the board.
So I'd like to continue the conversation with council and ask some questions. And then try to address some of the concerns, because I personally have been bombarded with emails from folks in District 5 really wanting to have this decision on their own and not have a gubernatorial appointment. But my first question is specifically, what, as Mr. Hendricks just pointed out, what district is being voted on? I know we just changed it. So what, for folks' knowledge, he obviously can't vote for the district that he was just in, but maybe if it's for the previous district, he could. How does that work in this case?
Yeah, so for the purposes of this vacancy election, it will be the former district, the one adopted in 2011. So if Mr. Hendrick is in an area that was districted into District 4, he would be in that district for the purposes of voting for the District 4 supervisor in this election, but he would be in District 5 for the purposes of voting on the vacancy election. And it is a little complicated, and we're working on that with the elections official, but they'll get basically 2 ballots.
Interesting.
So they will get to vote for a supervisor in both districts.
Yeah, and they could even run for supervisor in both
If this
districts.
passes.
Oh,
Yes.
interesting.
Yeah.
Very good. Well, I love this board to discuss this perceived rush. I'm not sure how rushed it's been. I mean, this has been on our radars for more than months, actually.
More than months. I agree.
Close to a year, given the infrequency of Supervisor Berkowitz's attendances meetings and just talking with folks. I know there's a lot of interest out there right now from folks that have called me and said, what's the job entail? So I'm not entirely sure that even 11 days in the collection of 20 signatures is a tough lift for anybody at this point in time to really let the people make the decision, which is what we're all about here. I know in having discussions with Senator McGuire's office on this matter, and particularly paying attention to what San Luis Obispo County went through very recently, and also San Bernardino, as county council mentioned, those positions being filled actually took quite a long time. I was going to ask county council, Joel, did you look into either of those two? I know you mentioned San Bernardino, but did you look into
San Benito.
San Benito, sorry.
San Benito.
And San Luis? I mean, I was told by a couple people, the governor wasn't even involved in those decisions. It was left to staff. And this came from sources in the Capitol. What's your knowledge of what took place with those appointments? How long did they take?
I don't know the details of those appointments. I was looking more at their election issues. And so San Luis Obispo is where we get the AG opinion from December that says the old district boundaries. That was helpful. San Benito had a similar issue, where they had to call a short primary with an urgency item in 2020. So like those were good examples, but I didn't look specifically at the process for appointment and how long it took. I know just from kind of canvassing the counties, the governor can act pretty slowly. And so, a lot of politics involved, and it's, even though the statute says the governor shall appoint, there's nothing to force him to. So it can
Right.
take quite a long time.
Which is exactly what I heard in those previous cases. So, I think in order for this to really work, and since we do have a period of time, and personally, I know what it takes to go through putting my name on a ballot right now, and the amount of time it takes to get signatures, which is very one-day effort. If you're serious about wanting to serve this community, the people should have that choice and decision to have it on a ballot and vote for it. So if we could give them that opportunity, I'd make the motion to do so. So I'm all about approving and adopting this resolution today.
Thank you. I'd just like to say, I think the urgency is all about representation. And, there has been a lack of not to Bob's, not that it's Bob's fault, that he wasn't able to do that, in his last few months, just wasn't able to do that. But I think the people of District 5 have been without representation long enough. And I think the fairest way is certainly in our democratic rules is to put it out for a vote, not to have one person decide who is going to represent you, but have the people represent you. And so if there was any way that we could get this done and on a ballot so the people can decide, then that's what I'm in favor of. Supervisor Short?
Yes, thank you. Yes, I do agree that I think we are best served by allowing the people to make their decision. And I'm sure the governor can't dispute that as well. If he was put in a position of having to appoint somebody, I think, if he would have his druthers, if I could put words in his mouth, that he would agree that people choosing their own representation is the better avenue to go. And 100% of the feedback I got until the meeting today was in favor of the people making the choice. So with that, I will second that motion.
Thank you.
One more
Okay.
question. The governor still has the opportunity to appoint right today, right? He could fill that position up till the November 8th election.
Yeah. So what would happen is if somebody gets 50+1% at the June primary, the board, you go through, you certify the results, you do the thing. So maybe 2-3 weeks after that, the person would take office, take the oath. So the board can appoint right now until then, or if nobody gets the majority, now until November. So it's not that the governor can't fill the vacancy. We're really talking about how long that vacancy is going to be.
Right. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joel.
Anything else from board members? Kylie, would you please poll the vote?
Supervisor Short,
Yes.
Supervisor Howard,
Yes.
Chair Hemmingson.
Yes. Okay, moving on to item number 16, which is to approve and adopt a resolution of the Del Norte County Board of Supervisors establishing an ad hoc committee to advise the board regarding Del Norte Ambulance's request for an exclusive operating area as requested by Supervisor Short. And I'm going to let Supervisor Short speak to this on the makeup and the goal.
Well, thank you. Working on this project. Thank you, John and Charles, for being here today. It's my desire to bring as much information to the board as I possibly can. The statute of the EOA process is very, very short. Most of the rules that we live by are covered in case law. Larry Karstad, the executive director of Northwest EMS, is kind of leading me through this process. And as I said, my intent is when we do come to, or when I do bring this item to the board, my intent is to bring as much information and background as possible. To that end, it was my thought that during our conversations that the board would have questions as to what Del Norte Ambulance does for the community. I don't see that the board has a really good avenue to have that lens. So I'm requesting the board allow me to put together this ad hoc committee that will be comprised of fire chiefs from the different fire departments in the county, or their designees. And in some cases there's responders that respond pretty often that may have some feedback. So we may see chiefs and their designees, also hospital personnel and personnel from DHHS, from the behavioral health branch as well. That will be hopefully taken care of with one meeting. Asking just a few questions that Larry and I have yet to work out. I would like to say that Del Norte Ambulance is purposefully excluded from this ad hoc. And that is the purpose behind that. Larry and I discussed this, and it was just because we want open communication from the participants. So with that,
And Supervisor Starkey.
oh yes, I'm sorry. Yes, Supervisor Starkey will be also on this.
Can you expand on that, Supervisor Short? What do you mean by that? Because I'm reading the community partners piece on the therefore be it resolved. Is that statute? Is that legislated? So they're not one of the listed community partners on this, but they're not prevented from participating. I mean, how's this all gonna work?
They're not. What we're hoping to garner from this ad hoc is the best information for the board. And the discussion was that if Del Norte Ambulance personnel were in the room, that it may stifle the conversation. So that was the thought there.
Okay.
Doesn't mean that we couldn't ask them to participate after.
I guess I'm trying to understand the logic behind this, because they've been providing the service to our community now for decades.
Correct.
And I'm assuming they would be potentially the most knowledgeable on the subject. Is that a misconception on my part? I mean, I'm not involved with emergency services here in the community, but how are we supposed to look at this? I mean, to me, we're forming a committee that potentially works in a vacuum unless you have folks that really understand emergency services like yourself. I mean, you obviously do. You live and breathe it every day. But here's a group that has provided a service to our community for quite a long time. So the transparency of this process, they're going to be able to have input into, or no at this point? How do you foresee that coming forward?
Well, as part of bringing this concept forward to the board, it's our decision is going to come down to two avenues.
Okay.
One of them is exclusive operating, giving them exclusive operating or exclusivity for emergency operations by the grandfathering process, which they qualify for. Or there is the competitive process, and that's written in statute. So my thought was that if I was to bring this to the board with just that information, then it seems like the obvious question is, well, why would we give them one or the other? So that is my purpose of trying to put some other voices into the conversation to answer those questions, rather than it be just coming from me.
Sure.
It would be, hospital voices, emergency services voices, and behavioral health branch voices that.
If I could just interject something, wouldn't it make more sense if you and Supervisor Starkey were the committee and you interviewed all of these people that you just mentioned and get their input from it, rather than saying that they're part of the committee and basically traveling? Would that work out? Or
I guess that makes sense. as
So
well.
it's clear, right? That is what we wrote here. I think there was an earlier iteration that was all the community partners on the committee. And
That's
so
right.
now it's actually just the two supervisors
Right.
with, kind of the goal to talk to community partners.
And so in that particular case, I would say that Del Norte Ambulance would be one of those people that you would be interviewing, that you would get that information from. So as you're compiling all this information, you're not going to leave out anybody. You're going to get that from all of it. Is that the way
I
you
guess
see?
you're right. I still had it in my head that we'd be all
I
together in a room.
just think you're talking about a pretty cumbersome process. You're talking about, when I look at a committee, I'm thinking of something that, is going to be in process. An ad hoc committee is going to be in process for a few months. So you're going to be gathering this information. You're not going to be sitting down at one time with everybody and having just one conversation and say, that's it. So I think in my opinion, and I know this is your call.
Yeah,
You're the one that asked for it.
Like I said, I still did have it on my head that we'd be sitting down all at once. But yeah, like I mentioned before, it would be like one meeting. So just like you're saying, and like Joel's written up.
Yeah.
Basically the same thing is if we would just ask the questions to the individuals.
Yeah, it does address my concerns in here.
I'm not saying you can't have more than one group of people at a time, but to make them all come together all at one time and then start coming with these things, I think it just makes more sense to me that you would have everybody, basically weighing in.
Sure.
And get that balanced view. I mean, that's the way I see it.
Yeah, Supervisor Hemmingson's right, but I think as Joel's addressed, and you and Supervisor Starkey are the committee, and you will consult with as many community partners. I guess it just seemed to me offensive potentially to Del Norte Ambulance that they're not a listed community partner here yet. They provided the service for decades.
I can see his point if they were all meeting together.
Sure.
And if it's hard to bring that conversation. It's easy to say if there's something good. I mean, that's pretty easy if you're going to be there and you have somebody and it's all good. But if you're having to weigh in on something that you're not very happy with, it may be a little more intimidating. And I can see the point there. But I think that all the, everybody should be involved and everybody should weigh in.
Well,
so
we're in a position, we take the good with the bad, and it's got to be a transparent process that comes back to the board. So I'm not trying to be critical. I'm just trying to say I would really like to have their voice heard. And if it was excluded, I'd be concerned when it eventually came back to us. So that's just my thought, but I still like the idea of going forward with it. I just want to ensure we hear from them as part of this process.
Yeah,
It's certainly. And I apologize if.
Oh, no.
If,
You don't need to
if I meant
apologize.
that, or if I
So
insinuated that we were not going to hear from them.
a little
through this whole
bit of
process.
background
There's lots of pieces.
of why it's written that way is there was a conversation with Larry about doing a committee that would include donor ambulance. But since the scope of the question is kind of evaluative of donor ambulance, for neutrality's sake, it would make sense not to have them on the committee. Then we changed the idea to having a committee just to do supervisors, but that committee partners language didn't change. It does say including but not limited to. There's no reason that the committee can't talk to them. It wasn't the intention to not include them at all. It was just they weren't going to be on the committee, and then the
Yeah.
committee changed
Yeah,
composition.
fair enough. We got it. I got it with Supervisor Short said it, so it's- yeah, thank you.
Okay, let's open up for public comment. John, you want to speak to this?
Yeah, still morning. Good morning. I'm John Pritchett, General Manager of Del Norte Ambulance. With me is Charles Tweed, our Operations Manager. Thank you, Chairman Hemmingson and members of the board. A bit of an aside. First off, we would like to respectfully ask for better communications involving matters of Del Norte Ambulance that comes before this board. In this case, we found out about this in the middle of the weekend, middle of the JC's tournament. Larry Karstad didn't know about this until we told him on Monday. And earlier, well, last year, there was a matter that came up involving Del Norte Ambulance and mental health transfers. And the importance or lack the importance, depending on your viewpoint, of that. That was one we didn't know about until we watched it on the feed. We just asked, Del Norte Ambulance is always available to come talk to the board as a group or individually about any matter or question. So I want to take a few seconds to cover the grandfathering process just briefly. We're requesting that the Board of Supervisors approve the concept of the process, not a final product, which is a long ways down the road. And we're asking you to task North Coast EMS to begin work on the transportation plan, which would cover items such as response times, levels of care, staffing levels, and et cetera. In other words, the grandfathering structure would allow the county greater oversight than it has now, while still allowing the county the ability to change direction should it wish. Once North Coast EMS Joint Powers Authority, which Supervisor Short is on, gives us approval, it would then go to the state for its approval. It's a long process. The grandfathering process all benefits Del Norte Ambulance by providing us with more security, allowing us the ability to pay our top performers more money to keep them here longer, also allows us better financing for new equipment. It benefits the county in that the county gets to avoid the staggering high cost of going through the big process, $75,000 to $200,000, and that cost is incurred each time the contract comes due. Now, in regards to the ad hoc committee, first off, we do come to you on a yearly basis and present a report about what's going on at Del Norte Ambulance. We try to do that during EMS week. I think we've done it for 6 or 7 years. We missed 1 year because of COVID. We will continue to do that this year and into the future. Regarding the committee, the way it's written almost seems like, I don't want to say witch hunt, but it does seem to be barbed. And frankly, we have no problem stepping into the spotlight, none whatsoever. We're proud of our service. But you already pay for this, for a examination, the taxpayers of our community, of Del Norte Ambulance through North Coast EMS. It's they are our governing agency and they provide oversight. Use them, ask them. We think the question that the ad hoc committee needs to ask is, what is the level of service needed in Del Norte County with this population base, with this payer mix, with the services available locally and regionally, the long-term impacts of COVID, the future of community paramedicine? What is needed to provide the appropriate level of service? That's the key question.
John, I'm going to ask you to wrap it up.
Sure. One more thing real quick. The other item on the resolution, we just discussed this regarding community partners. The name that is conspicuously absent is Del Norte Ambulance. It makes sense to have the ambulance service that has faithfully served our community for more than 40 years as part of the equation. In conclusion, we are proud of our service. When Ron Sandler purchased Del Norte Ambulance in '85, it was limited resources, limited skills. Today, we provide service beyond contract specifications with new equipment, strong people, and a commitment to the community that can only be made by a local company. We haven't raised our rates in 4 years, if we can only say that about gas prices.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, board.
I appreciate it. Anybody else?
I don't understand. What does this mean? Exclusive operating area? Does it mean that no competitive ambulances can come in? I don't get it. And if I don't get it, I'm sure there's other people that don't get it. But right now, it seems like the fire department's always answering the calls. And that doesn't work for me. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Any, you got some? public-
I have some hands
Okay.
raised online.
Go ahead. Okay,
Yeah, sorry. Hank, you are on? Give me 1 second. I may have to promote him. For some reason, it's not working, Chair. I'm gonna move on to Tanya for the time being.
okay.
Tanya, you are on?
Hi, this is Tanya Piercy again from the county and also a registered nurse with 33 years and 12 of that being in the emergency room. I am just a thought that whenever you start saying exclusive and then something happens and then now you have nobody or they have nobody that's available to respond, and then you get patients that sit there in the emergency room sometimes for days. But I just want this board or committee or whatever to think about that exclusivity when what happens if they can't fulfill the duties. So, I've seen it happen, even the best laid plans, Anyway, that's my comment.
Thank you.
Hank, it seems you're on. You just need to unmute your mic. Chair, I'm not sure if he raised his hand on accident. What? I'm just going to assume he accidentally raised his hand, so
Okay.
there is no other public comment.
Is there any other public comment on this item? Here? Okay, seeing no other public comment, then we'll bring it back to the board.
Can we address this
Exclusivity?
language right here in the resolution on the EOA exclusive operating area? Or Joel, or what's that? Just for edification of the community, what's that mean?
Yeah. Under the Health and Safety Code, the LEMSA can authorize an exclusive operating area that's exactly what it kind of sounds like. It's a monopoly. And so it can do it based on a continuous history, like what donor ambulance is asking for, or it can go to a competitive bid process. And so part of this would be evaluating which one of those is better, the level of service needed to go into bid, the performance of donor ambulance, all those things that go into consideration that the board might want to know when deciding. And to be clear, the LEMSA decides, but they've asked the board for input, or they will ask the board for input. And Larry has said he will not move forward with something that the board doesn't bless.
Good.
Okay, thank you. So I'm looking for a motion to approve this ad hoc committee.
So moved.
Have a motion.
And I will second that motion, but I just want to be clear. I think this is the healthy process. This, if done correctly and transparently, should allow Del Norte Ambulance, in this case, after service for as many decades as Del Norte Ambulance has been here, to really come shining through in an audit type situation like this, and allow for that recommendation from North Coast EMS to the board. So yeah, I'm actually encouraged by what this might tell us, or not tell us, but I'm definitely encouraged that this will give Del Norte Ambulance an opportunity to have essentially a third-party audit that's going to tell us, hey, after 85 years, you guys either know your stuff or you don't, but it's a great opportunity in my opinion, and it'll help highlight, in my opinion, what I feel has been great service to our community for decades. So appreciate your input.
That was the second.
That was a second.
Thank you. Any other comments? Kylie, would you please pull the vote?
Supervisor Howard,
Yes.
Supervisor Short,
Yes.
Chair Hemmingson.
Yes.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, guys. Okay, we're going to move on to legislative and budget issues. Item number 22, approve and authorize the chair to send a letter of support for AB 2120, investing federal funding in local bridges as requested by the Community Development Director.
Morning, Board. The request before you, and it's actually came to us through CSAC, the County State Association of Government. Probably got the acronym wrong. Suggesting that local jurisdictions really take a look at this bill. What it does is it restores a previously used formula that places emphasis on funding toward the local bridges and state bridges. And so we are definitely supportive of any funds that may come our way. So according to the document, which was included with the board report, the Infrastructure Investments and Jobs Act, which was approved in November of 2021, dedicates approximately $4.2 billion in California to local and state bridges. And so we just want to make sure that the apportionments are favorable to all of us.
Cool, Heidi. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, motion to approve.
I have a motion and a second. Any public comment?
Chair, I have none online.
Seeing no public comment, then we'll bring it back to the board. Kylie, please poll the vote.
Supervisor Short,
Yes.
Supervisor Howard,
Yes.
Chair Hemmingson.
Yes. Okay, I'm going to move on to item number 24, which is pursuant to election code section 9118B. Submit an initiative to repeal Measure R to the voters at the June 6, 2022 statewide election, or pursuant to Elections Code 9188C, order a report pursuant to the Elections Code Section 9111 to be presented to the board within 30 days as requested by County Council.
So what's presented with the materials here is the certification from the elections official of the requisite number of signatures to put an initiative to repeal Measure R forward on the ballot. The way the statute works, normally the board would have three choices when this thing comes. You can either adopt it, submit it to the voters, or ask for this report. Because the initiative would repeal another initiative, I don't think that just adopting it is an option. So what you have is the second two options. You can either submit to the voters, and it would go on June. Or if you ask for this report, in Elections Code 9111, there's a list of types of things that could be reported back about the impacts of the ordinance. This would allow staff time to gather the information about what would happen if that revenue source were gone, what would the impacts be to services, to staff levels, to infrastructure, and then it would come back to the board. And at that point, the board would put it on the ballot. To be clear, because of the timing of these things, it's the next statewide election, at least I think 83 days out. So 30 days from now, it won't be June anymore. So one of the things you're really voting on is it going to go June or is it going to go November?
Okay. Well, I personally think that we need to have these reports from to establish the concerns and the impacts to each of those budgets. So
Yeah, I kind of in agreement with you, Supervisor Hemmingson. I know I've been kind of, I don't know, I don't want to call it preaching up here, but definitely been talking during my border reports what Measure R and a repeal of Measure R would mean to what the voters passed last year. And obviously I have some concerns that I've expressed, but those concerns have just been my opinions based on how we budgeted and allocated those funds as a board. But this gets to a point now where those funds have been allocated, potentially even expended as they have been with the sheriff's office, and allowing for what we've called this revolving door to stop, where we don't get this incessant turnover, which creates a vacuum at the sheriff's office and essentially nobody to go out on calls to provide the service, which is why Measure R got put on the ballot in the first place. So this better be dang well analyzed. So the voters moving forward here in this upcoming election, whether it's June or in November, as stated, full well know what this repeal means. Because for me personally, when we voted to put this on the ballot previously, it's because our voters requested these issues, our jail, our sheriff's office, our animal control, and our roads and our code enforcement and blight be addressed. And so we have done that. We have held true to the commitment of what the voters have given us permission to do, budgeted it, expended some of those funds, and now we're in a situation where it can be repealed. I don't even want to contemplate what that means to the sheriff's office if all of a sudden we retract an 11.5% raise, which is in the MOU. If this were to be repealed, it's in the MOU. Those raises would be retracted. So I would hope that the sheriff's office is paying a great deal of attention to this and what it does mean. But I personally, Neil, I'm hoping you and Clint could really help the community understand what that impact means in a monetary type form, just like the LAO's office was informing CSAC what it meant with this 52 or $42 million budget surplus as projected. What could it mean if the 1.3 million, which you guys projected would be the revenues from this, were to disappear, and how it would impact animal control, code enforcement, the jail, the sheriff's office, et cetera. So that's my thoughts, guys. I'm just, you know where I'm leaning right now just by that statement, but I don't know what your thoughts are. I'd love to hear them.
Jerry, can you let me talk first next time? 'Cause I said all the things that I want to say.
Yeah, no, yeah, I think.
No, I totally agree. I mean,
Yeah.
To defund what we have done right here, I think is going to be disastrous, and we need to demonstrate what that's going to be to the voters. So the report is definitely something that we need to have.
Okay, motion?
That is a motion.
So, okay, is that basically, Darren, to be clear, pursuant to the elections code section?
Move to order a report pursuant to election code section 9111 to be presented to the board within 30 days as requested by county council.
Thank you.
Second.
And a second. Any public comment?
First off, you all remember that you placed on Measure R that the voters had the right to repeal this. So you knew that one day that was going to happen. Secondly, it only passed by 1%. Okay, that's pretty low. We pay more sales tax on the dollar than Sacramento. And I had my daughter send me receipts. They pay 7.75 starting this year. Last year it was 7.5% sales tax. I don't know, by asking for a report, is that going to delay the process for us to vote on this in June? Of course it will. So that's pretty ugly because we collected nearly 900 signatures. People do not want this sales tax. The sheriff's office is a mess. These officers, they make, including their benefits, over $100,000 a year. If you can't survive on that in Delaware County, then there's a problem. Secondly, these officers are incompetent. You got officers with less than 2 years in the department running around trying to give legal advice and telling rape victims, well, we don't find consistency in your story. How do you handle that? Or telling people it's okay to aggressively approach people with guns and not even a report is generated. This is outrageous. I'm really tired of it. And the current sheriff, this is being done on his watch. So I wouldn't be thinking that pleading to the public about law enforcement is going to do it for you folks. Because there's a lot of people out there that are very unhappy with our county sheriff's department. So folks, you can delay this process all you want to, but the people submitted the signatures, they want to vote on it, and delaying the process is denying justice. So think about that. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment?
Norma Williams, Chapter President, Delaware County Employees Association, SEIU 10-1. We took a look at this idea, or actually this initiative, once Supervisor Howard at the last meeting noted it in your comments. And so our chapter began to take and review what happened in 2020, as well as this. I could say it in Spanish, but then you'd have to translate it and it wouldn't be good. I'm serious. Good. Anyway, Measure R not only impacts the Sheriff Employees Association, but it also impacts members of our union, mainly those who work in the district attorney's office and in probation, mostly in juvenile hall, as well as in the probation office. Quite frankly, we negotiated in good faith with the county on raises that also impacts those public safety employees, who, by the way, still, even when, and I predict, the final salary survey is done and completed later this year, will still show that we are still making under market in terms of salaries against the comparable counties. I definitely would approve and support a delay in this process in order for for administration to take a look at the actual impact of what this would mean in November. Quite frankly, I could already tell you what it's going to mean in November. You're going to have a reduction in services, a reduction in programs, a reduction in staff. This has been my mantra since I've been president since 2013. This county has a problem with recruitment and retention. This so-called initiative puts the public at risk if it's approved. Bottom line, I see this as an anti-law enforcement, pro-crime initiative, and one that is not in the best interest of this community, and definitely is a slap in the face in the county employees who do and have agreed to work for this county in the public good and for the public safety. Not only for members of my union, but also for those in bid management and members of the Sheriff Employees Association. So I respectfully request that you do have appoint staff to definitely review the impact. As I've noted, I already know what that impact is going to be. You know what that impact is going to be. We now need to educate the public so that they can fully understand what this is all about. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment? Sure. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board, Randy Waltz, Sheriff. And this is going to be very brief because you already know the impact that this has had on our office, and it has kept us afloat. And these reports will certainly show the impact that it would have if it was repealed. Not only the raises for our deputies and the rest of the staff, but positions also within our agency and the jail and the medical services that are provided within the jail. So all of these things would be a huge impact to us. And we are on the recovery side right now from where we were a year ago. So that is something that would be very troublesome to us if this was repealed.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
Chair, I have a few hands raised
Okay.
online. Tanya, you are on.
Hi, Tanya Piercy, County. I'd just like to point out a couple things. One, Sacramento County's minimum combined 2022 sales tax is 8.75%. Eureka is 9.25. Arcata is 8.5. Fortuna is 8.75. So we are not like way out there. Yes, we pay a lot of money out. That happens. But I'm also pro law enforcement. If you offer low wages, you get the least trained and the least desirable employees. And that is in any field. Waitress, motel workers, law enforcement, all of them. If you don't offer competitive wages, you will not get the better employees. Sorry, it's just the way it happens. Thank you.
Thank you.
Wait one moment, Chair.
Okay.
Brandon, you are on.
Hi, thank you, board. This is Brandon Bieber. I just like to express my disappointment that this is turned into if you support law enforcement or not. You know, it's really about the decisions that this board makes and how you allocate money. Yes, we need law and order. There's not enough of it. And this board should act responsibly and portray law and order itself. I think it's disappointing that we give county administrators raises while we need better cops. And not saying they don't work hard, but we need to compensate them adequately. Making this about law enforcement only is almost proper. Millions of dollars to DHHS when our cops are on the front lines dealing with these people daily. Allocate funds for them, and you don't need this measure our money. All you do is take more money and spend more money. You're going to get $10 more million for COVID. Increase taxes. I ask you to stop the ballooning of government. Yes, let it go to the election. Let the citizens decide. It barely passed. Let us vote on it. The sooner the better. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more, Kylie?
Yes, one more. Lonnie, you are on.
Good morning, board. This is Chief Raymond from Probation. I'll be brief because I understand to some degree both sides. I understand the desire to be fiscally responsible as a government, and as a taxpayer myself, I want my dollars to be used well. At the same time, I operate a fairly significant law enforcement agency in the county that covers and touches a lot of different parts of the justice system. And the biggest point I'd like to make is that the raises and salary increases that my staff have experienced, that has been a long time coming, and that came out of Measure R, are important to them. They feel valued. They feel supported by that. And financially, it would be challenging for us as a department and them as individuals in supporting their families if this were to change. And even though I understand some of the other commenters' points that this should be about fiscal responsibility rather than whether we support our law enforcement officers, and I understand that sentiment. The reality is, if this were repealed and changes were made, I believe our officers that serve the community every day will feel that they are not supported. And that's a challenging road to walk between the two pulls and two desires from all parties involved. So I look forward to being a part of the conversations as they go forward, as it does impact us tremendously. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Chair, I do not have any more online.
Thank you. I'll ask again for any other public comment. Okay, seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board.
Chair, just, yeah, you know, I know this doesn't sit well with a lot of folks. I know Measure R was a very close margin at 51%. But two things just based on the comments that I've heard today. One, in this case, this gives the people really some time to think about it. And I think that's what you'd want, to inform the voter with, instead of having crunch time down to June, now you have till November really to get the true information out to the voter. This is what your decision means for the county. And I know the voters spoke with a very narrow margin, but what it really came down to is, do we want new taxes? And new taxes is always a tough argument to sell, but it did sell here by a small margin, sold more in the city than it did in the county. The other thing I want to try to just speak to briefly is that since I've been on the board, we've had this general fund pot of money, and it's a little over $37 million, of which close to 70% of this goes into our public safety budget, all 100% out of general fund. And that's more than just about any other county out there, it's because that's what we're hearing from our community and how they want those general fund dollars spent. And so it's been that way ever since. But the problem is that even under that allocation, which allows the remaining 30 to go to those other general fund departments, like community development across the street, that's supposed to be helping with the roads and bridges and everything else we have here to get homes built. They haven't even been able to hire an engineer for how many years, Jerry? I mean, I can't even count at this point. We've been operating on one community development department because we can't be competitive enough in our region to draw the right people here. And so we've attempted to slow the revolving door to try to make our wages competitive enough to bring folks here. And this is one way our community suggested to do it. We put it on the ballot and they made their decision. So I just encourage those that maybe before for Measure R repeal or against the Measure R repeal to really get as much information as possible, get it out to the folks and let the folks make the decision again. But this should allow the time necessary to do it. Thanks for that, Chairman.
You bet. Anything else?
No, sir.
Kylie, would you please poll vote?
Supervisor Holland,
Yes.
Supervisor Short,
Yes.
Chair Hemmingson.
Yes. Okay, I'm going to table or remove item number 23. And Neil, if you would coordinate with all the departments to get reports together so that we can hear them, be not the next meeting, but the meeting after that. That should be about that 30-day period. I'm hoping, and we can get those reports out so that we can hear those before we have this come before us again. Okay, item number 25, receive and consider the American Rescue Plan Act and Coronavirus State and Local Fiscal Recovery Funds final rule update and approve the recognition of the local fiscal recovery funds. Boy, that's a tongue twister, all that stuff. As lost revenue as presented and requested by the county administrative officer. Neil, you want to speak to this?
Yeah, thank you, Chair, Supervisors. This really is just an update. Before, when the American Rescue Plan Act was passed, there was an interim final rule that changed as public comments came in January of 2022. The rule was made final. It provided a lot more flexibility and the recognition of revenue and the allowable uses under the American Rescue Plan Act. So what this does is really simplify the accounting and reporting on the county level for these funds. It doesn't change the board's priorities at all that were adopted with the budget process of fiscal year 21-22 or going forward for any other future budgets. The allowable uses will still be brought to the board each fiscal year. And so what this does basically, instead of making this fall under multiple allowable uses in the American Rescue Plan Act. It limits it to one, which is revenue loss recognition. Prior to the final rule, in order to qualify for this allowable use, there was a complicated formula involved. They've changed that. They've simplified that based on the public comment. And so the Department of Treasury now has said that if you receive less than $10 million in American Rescue Plan Act funds, then you can recognize it as revenue loss, which Delaware County's allocation was significantly less than that.
Thank you. Thank you. We have a motion.
Second.
Any public comment?
Chair, at this time, I'm not seeing any hands raised online.
Thank you. With that, would you poll the vote?
Supervisor Short,
Yes.
Supervisor Howard,
Yes.
Chair Hemmingson.
Yes. And with that, Kylie, are we done?
I believe so.
Thank you. Our next meeting is March 22nd, 2022. This meeting's adjourned.